What's up, everybody? Kip here with Omnia Fishing. We are live in Omnia HQ with our man, Seth Feider. Seth just got back from the Classic about a week ago. Seth, how you been? How's the Classic? What are your overall thoughts?
Doing good. Had a fun time at the Classic. That's a good spot for one. Big metropolitan area. A lot of vendors there, a lot of cool stuff to see. And yeah, we got a little treat too because we got rewarded with a Minnesota Classic champion.
That's
bringing
right.
it home
That's
to
right.
Minnesota.
First ever.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt.
That's right. We do have Easton with us as well. We'll bring him in here. And we actually asked you guys, our viewers, via social media to write in some questions. So we'll definitely have those for Easton and Seth. But we'll bring him in here. Easton, thank you for joining us. I know your life is super busy right now. This is probably the 100th podcast you've done in the last week. How you doing? What's your overall thoughts on the Classic? Obviously, pretty good being that you won it.
Yeah, first of all, thanks for having me on. But yeah, that was my second Classic I've been in. I fished the one at Grand and then this one. But it was awesome being in Texas. Lots of big fish to be had, and just overall vibes in Texas were super cool. It just seemed like the love for bass fishing is super strong in that state and definitely in that area around Dallas. It was definitely super cool to be a part of. And yeah, I mean, there's some big fish in the lake, which always helps. So it was super cool. Definitely out of the two I've been to, that was my favorite for sure.
I bet. But yeah, Texas is a cool state as far as bass fishing goes with heritage and history. They probably do more for bass fishing than all the other states combined with their share lunker programs. And they really, that's their prize fish in Texas. So great place to have tournaments, great place to fish. And you can really tell, you can see what they're doing with the lakes and reap the benefits of it. With Ray Roberts being more of probably one of the least populated bass lakes in the state, but still plenty of fish in there, obviously. It's just fun fishing in Texas. Everywhere they go, you can see the work they're putting in, building structure, and then the share lunker program, stocking fish. So Texas is always an awesome place to go for bass fishing.
So this kind of leads into our first question from one of our viewers. I think it's an awesome question. It's one that's been brought up in the past, but in the past, there's always been this stereotype that northern anglers struggle down south. To me, I feel like the tide has changed over the last decade, maybe. We've got the Johnstons, you guys, Jay Shakurit, I'm missing others as well, but a lot of success coming out of the northern part of the country. Is there anything that you guys can attribute to that? Are you spending more time down there? Are northern anglers just getting better? What's the deal?
I think there's just more of us now.
Sure.
Like when I started, you had Kevin Van Dam from Michigan, and that was about it. They're seeing a lot more guys come out of the opens out of Minnesota, Wisconsin. That area's been really strong the last few years. I would say before there was more of a struggle just because typically we're fishing all natural lakes, grass, rock, crawfish eaters, bluegill eaters, and we don't have the shad or reservoirs and stuff like that. But this day and age, it's so much easier to learn about that kind of stuff between YouTube and all the stuff that's out there. I think it's easier this day and age to transition to unfamiliar waters versus 20 years ago.
Sure. Easton, what are your thoughts coming out of the college game? You traveled the country quite a bit. You probably had a ton of experience down there, but what are your thoughts on that?
For me, I'm super grateful to grow up where I did in Grand Rapids in my area. We have everything under the sun, basically, other than tidal fisheries. I got dirty water, clean water, flipping, frogging, and then you have your clear smallmouth stuff. I just got a little bit of a taste of everything before I went down south and really started learning that whole deal. But yeah, I guess I'd much rather start in the north and learn south than to start in the south and learn north. I feel like that was just an easier learning curve than if you grew up in the south and tried to go up and learn like clearwater smallmouth. But yeah, I'm super grateful I made that decision to move south to further learn and hopefully set myself up to do what I'm doing now. I feel like that's the sole reason why I'm at where I'm at today. But yeah, like I said, there's no place I'd rather grow up than northern Minnesota.
Yeah. That's another thing we have such good fishing up here that if you wanted to try a new technique or learn something, if you've never thrown a glide bait before or never thrown a drop shot before or something like that, that is a nice thing about Minnesota. You can go to almost any lake and go get 20, 40, 50 bites on something you've never done before and
get some confidence in it right away.
You can learn a lot quicker up north where some of the places down south, like a Ray Roberts or something where even when you're doing the right stuff, you're getting 5, 6, 7 bites a day. It's going to be hard for someone there to pick up a bait they've never thrown before and get the amount of bites they can on it and learn with it, which is a big benefit to living up north. You can, like I said, you can pick up any bait in the tackle box and on a summer day. And we're obviously we don't have 10 pounders, but you can go out and get 40, 50 bites on something you've never done before. And I think it helps us learn a lot quicker too.
For sure. Let's get into what everybody wants to know. Easton, what are your Nico rig secrets? Specifically, how do you determine what size weights you're using given the situation? Or walk us through your rod, reel, line, bait of choice. That kind of won it for you.
Yeah, so for me, it was all about changing the weights throughout the week. The fish, they would shift every day. They'd shift areas in the pockets and also where in the water column they were at. So that obviously determined the weight size and also the wind speed. 2 out of the 3 days we had winds up to 40 miles an hour. So that obviously I had to upsize or else your bait gets thrown all over the place. So on day 2, it was glass column. So I went to a 132nd, super lightweight, almost basically weightless. And then the other 2 days, was a 332nd. But yeah, it was just all about where in the water column they're positioned. I was shaking it over their head for the most part. And some of the ones that were buried in the tree, I would just get it as close as I could and let it fall all the way to the bottom, and they'd fall it all the way down and pin it on the bottom. But yeah, my setup was I was using a 7-foot medium Lewis Elite rod on a custom light 300 size reel. And my line was interesting. My line setup, I was using 8-pound braid to a 17-pound fluorocarbon leader. I really beefed up the leader just for that added abrasion resistance, and so I could also lean on them a little bit, make sure I get them out of that thick stuff. So
What kind of
brief
leader?
rundown on what I was doing.
Sorry, what kind of leader were you using?
It was a Seaguar gold label leader.
So we are actually getting our buyer, Jacob, ordered the exact rod Easton was using, the 7-foot medium Elite. We've also got a huge pallet of Strike King on the way. Actually, I think it just showed up. The gold label, I don't believe is available in 17-pound to the public yet, but it should be pretty soon. We'll have that as well. But we're going to be running a sale in celebration of Easton winning the Classic. We're giving you guys 20% off all Strike King and Seaguar. All you have to do is use the code Easton, all caps, EASTON, and you're going to get 20% off all Strike King and Seaguar. That'll start today and it'll last for a week. So got a week to stock up on your Strike King and Seaguar products.
Okay. And one question on that rod, the medium, is that day in and day out Nico rig rod, or is that something you beefed up as well for the fishing around the trees, or is that your day in, day out setup?
That's just my go-to setup.
Okay.
The 7-foot seems to be long enough where it's long enough to have the tip that and also the backbone, and it's also short enough to where I can be accurate with my cast. It's like the perfect happy medium for me.
Gotcha.
And that hook, I read you were using the Ryugi Talisman Heavy Guard.
Mm-hmm.
Do you ever mix that up? Do you go with the standard one ever if you're around less cover, or do you pretty much just rock with that Heavy Guard?
So this was actually the first week I've ever used the Heavy Guard. I started with the normal. It worked out perfectly. Just before this tournament, I got a big shipment of all their stuff, so I've been playing with it. And I was just getting hung up in practice like crazy with using the normal one. I was like, the efficiency was terrible. I'd make a bad cast and get hung up and break it off and retie my whole setup. But I put that Heavy Guard one on and it was amazing. I could throw it in the middle of the tree and it would be all up in the stuff. And if I made a bad cast, you just feather it out. If you like reel really fast, it'll still get hung, but you can feather it out. It'll come out every single time. So that helped so much with the efficiency. And it is a really stiff weed guard, so I varied my hook set a little bit. With the normal Talisman, you just lean into them and you got them. But with the Heavy Guard, it's more of a snappy hook set. You just gotta it's more of a quick hook set rather than reeling into them.
Is that a heavy fluorocarbon weed guard, or is that wire?
So they do make a fluorocarbon one too, but that one still got hung up for me. This one, the Heavy Guard, is the wire one. It's got 2 pretty heavy gauge metal wires that, guards the hook, I guess. But yeah, that was definitely the deal for them trees. The Flora one is more for grass, I think. It still got hung over trees, so Heavy Guard was definitely a deal for me.
All right, let's move away from the Classic a little bit. Sure you're sick of talking about it.
I kind of want to talk about it more.
Okay.
I want to get more
into
into it. Obviously, that was probably your first time ever at Ray Roberts, or did you know much about that lake going into the Classic?
I pre-practiced for roughly a week. I think 4 days, 5 days, maybe early December. So that was my prior knowledge. I basically just drove around and made sure I knew how to navigate the timber, because obviously you don't want to do that in the 3.5 days they give you.
Yeah.
for the practice. Yeah.
In practice, did you side scan mostly, or were you fishing? Were you on the trolling motor? Were you scoping around? Run me through your pre-practice.
Yeah. So I spent the first 2 days, I didn't even fish. I just rode around, like I said, got lanes in every pocket basically on the lake. And then from then on, I graphed around a bunch the next day. And then the final day, I actually fished most of the day. And I found 2 pretty good populations of fish, I felt like. So what I did when I came back for the official practice, I started in those 2 zones, hoping I'd be able to find, like, how far back in the pockets they were set up, like, how far into the spawn they were. And then I was able to relocate those populations, and then I just duplicated in a couple more areas on the lake, how I attacked the
Okay.
actual practice.
Like first day of practice, what'd you do? What'd you find? How'd you feel? Run me through that.
So in pre-practice, I found this creek that I was super excited about. It had literally everything. It had a big grass flat in the middle of it, and then the back, it had perfect spawning stuff. It had nice flats with hard bottom and everything. So I was really excited to get back there. I knew the fish would be somewhere in that pocket, and I just had to find, like I said, how far into the spawning progress they were. And that's where I started practice for the event. And I got in there, and it didn't take long. I found right where I thought they'd be. They're in that 5 to 10 foot range, just on any hard bottom, just staging perfectly to spawn, just perfect pre-spawn stuff. And that's what I duplicated the rest of the lake. It seemed any channel swing, any secondary point, anything like that, just your classic staging to spawn type structures is what they were all set up on.
Okay. So when you say hard bottom, I watched a bit of the classic. It looked like you were mostly catching them off trees. Are you talking they were hanging on the trees that had hard bottom
Yep.
on the bottom around them?
Exactly.
Okay. And then the trees that were muddy, soft bottom, there wasn't much happening there.
Nope, not much happening. It was way more efficient for me to just run the ones that were on hard bottom.
Okay. Were you throwing at these fish, or are you just scoping around, seeing them on the trees, marking them, and just keep 'em moving?
I caught the first couple I saw, but yeah, after that, I was mostly just marking and moving, trying to cover as much
Okay.
as
And
I could.
did you start with an eco rig? Was that your first move, or a jig, or
I honestly started with a minnow and realized really quickly that was not the most efficient way to do it. So I quickly went to the Nico and still got bit. So that's what I ran with.
okay. With the minnows, just because they were positioned so tight in the trees, you couldn't get a good cast to them,
Yeah.
type deal?
Yep.
Okay. And then what day 2 of practice? Run us through that too.
Yeah. So day one, I fished that one creek for quite some time just to get a good bearing on what they were doing. And then the biggest thing for me was obviously the wind was the big X factor of the week. And I was watching the forecast like a hawk, watching the tournament days, what direction it was supposed to go. So then I made a game plan. Most time in practice, I really don't have a set game plan. I just go out and just follow my gut and just run around. But this was the first time where I had to have a set game plan. The wind was blowing so hard, there was a lot of stuff on the lake that was just unfishable. So I really had to plan out my practice. So every day I'd pick a couple creeks to check, 3 to 6 creeks I'd say that I would really cover. And yeah, that's how I went about it, just trying to find something that'd be out of any wind direction that I could fish efficiently.
Okay. And then at this point, you kind of had a pattern rolling. So when you're in these areas, are you side scanning, just looking for hard bottom and then fishing the trees on it? Or did you have all the hard bottom marked from pre-practice? Run us through that.
I guess almost all the time you could just look at your map, and obviously most channel swings have a hard bottom, or like I said, points almost always have a hard bottom. So that was mostly what I was running. I'd
Okay.
side scan the sides of flats going in. I did find a couple unmarked foundations doing that and that sort of thing. But for the most part, you could just look at your maps and just know where they'd be set up before you
Okay.
even got in there.
So you're running just off Lake Master and keying in on the hard bottom stuff.
Yep.
Okay. And then like days 1 and 2 of practice, like how many fish were you seeing when you went back to those areas you really liked?
A really
Were you
good
seeing like
area.
multiple fish on each tree, or one here, one there, or
Yeah, it seems every day as the day went on, as the sun got higher, more and more fish would show up for me. Like day one of the tournament was cloudy and super windy, and it had the fish absolutely pinned to bottom and so tight to the structure. You basically just had to fish structure. Like I wasn't even throwing at fish on
Okay.
the first day of the tournament. And then day two, I was picking off individual fish. So it all depended on kind of the conditions. But in practice, we dealt with mostly sunny conditions. I was able to see them on the fort face. And so I just, on a good area for me, I'd see 10 to 15 fish. It's not many fish.
Okay.
That would
And
be,
that's over how many trees? Is that 10 or 15 trees, or is that 5 trees with multiples, or
that'd be, I don't know, 30 trees. I'd see 10 fish and I'd feel pretty good about it.
if you're seeing them every 2, 3 trees?
Yeah.
Okay. And are those like consecutive trees, or were they all one over here, one over there? Or would you get on like rows where they'd be on every other one
It'd
deal?
be rows where they'd be on pretty basically everyone in a little row, and then you'd go a little ways without one, and then, yeah, you'd just get in little tiny pockets that had a good little group of fish. And like I
I
said,
got
those groups of fish would shift each day. They'd still be on hard bottom, but it wouldn't be the same trees. They'd just shift a little bit.
I gotcha. Then the last day and a half of practice, were you running the same pattern, trying to find more areas or seeing how they're moving or what? Run us through that.
Yeah, so each day of practice, I was trying my best to keep tabs on the very backs because I was fully expecting them to actually go up and start spawning. I knew where the fish were, but I was doing my best to try to stay ahead of them. To if they made a push to the bank, obviously I want to be a part of that. So I was just doing my best to keep tabs on them, trying all depth ranges to make sure I keep on top of them. All of practice, I was fishing the grass because all the grass I found was beautiful. And obviously Lee and Corey and those guys made it work, but I just could not get bit out of the grass for some reason. I don't know how I missed that, but did my best to keep it honest all week because that was part of my deal. For whatever reason, every creek that had grass had fish. I wasn't fishing in the grass, but I was near the grass fishing. And those were always the best creeks and when you could find that good milfoil. Yeah. But I was just doing my best all practice to keep an open mind and make sure I keep on top of them and try to stay ahead of them.
Okay. And then after practice, how were you feeling? Did you feel like you had a chance to have a good tournament / win, or you still nervous about it? Or how were you feeling before day one blast off?
I knew that I was on the quality of fish to hopefully make something happen, but I was really nervous about catching 5 a day. I was around a good area, like I said, is 15 fish, and even the ones that would acknowledge my bait, I was only catching 1 out of every 3 to 5. You're in a good area with 10 to 15 fish, you only catch a couple of those. All of a sudden, the population density is just not there. Obviously, the size is, but you definitely had to be extremely focused and pretty much locked in all day to get the bites that you needed to get a limit. I was definitely super nervous about that.
Okay. All right. Then can you run us through day one of the tournament? I watched day 3. I watched the whole thing. I was at the expo days 1 and 2, so I didn't really get to watch how it all went down. Did you start in that creek you really loved from pre-practice on day 1?
Yeah, from day one, that creek that I really liked was basically the only creek I could fish out of the ones I found. It was blowing like 40 out of the southwest, and that was the only one I could fish efficiently. So yeah, that's where I went. Yeah, and I caught like a 3-pounder and a 6.5 right away. And obviously that gives you a bunch of confidence right off the get-go. And from then on, it was just slow and steady all day. And honestly, it was a blessing, I think. The wind blew so hard because it made me stay in that area and really grind it out. And that allowed me to save my other areas for the rest of the tournament. So I definitely think that wind was a big blessing for me. And I think I had 8 bites on day 1 and landed 6 of them. And yeah, I had 25 pounds.
And then
Go ahead.
day 1 you said was real cloudy, so you're not seeing these fish on scope. You're just throwing the Nico to the base of the tree. Are you watching it go to the bottom and see if something moves, or are you not seeing them at all and just shaking it down there and getting bites that way?
I'd say I'd say 3 of my fish, I think. I would see after I'd the big deal for me was quick movements when they're on the bottom would trigger them to bite. These fish are so smart. And I'd let it fall out of the base of the tree and I would just pop it and I'd see a fish like kick out and go right back to the tree. And there's lots of catfish and stuff in here too. So the catfish, they'd follow the bait. If they didn't bite it, they just swim off. And that's how you know it's a catfish. But the bass come out to your bait and they just go right back to the tree. So that's how I differentiated the bass versus the catfish. And sometimes it would take 10 minutes of the fish on the tree, just throwing, and finally I'd get them to ignite on it. So I did see some of them, but some of them I would throw to the tree and it would just start swimming off. I wouldn't even see the fish.
Okay. And then are you just stayed with that Nico the whole time? Are you switching baits up when you know one's on the tree, or are you just force feeding them that Nico?
It was almost the Nico the whole time on day 1. I think I weighed 1 on a jerkbait and I weighed 1 on a jig too on day 1.
Okay.
So
All right.
yeah, 4 Nico fish and 1 jerkbait, 1 jig fish.
When you went to the jig or the jerk bait, was that a fish you had tried multiple times with the Nico rig, or you just saw them up a little position differently? Is that what made you go to a different bait?
Yeah, some of the trees were so bushy and had such an outreach of branches, I just couldn't get to them with the Nico, and they were sitting at the trunk of the tree. So that's when I'd go into them with the jig when I couldn't just reach them
Okay.
with anything else.
Bigger, heavier line and okay. And then day 2, you said it was sunny and they were floating up higher, and you were actually able to basically throw at fish all day,
Yeah.
flying fishing.
Yeah, day 2, they were literally like 6 inches under the surface. They were basically
wow.
sunning like on these trees.
Okay.
And I really wish that after day 1 of the tournament, I took my frog rod out. I'm pretty sure I could have smashed one a frog. They were so far under the surface, literally that
Yeah.
far. And it was really interesting because with that 3/32, I threw at the first 2 I saw, and I landed the bait too loud and I spooked them. I spooked out, and so I downsized the weight. And with that lighter weight, I can basically shake it on the surface and they'll come and get it basically right on the
Okay.
surface. So that's how I was getting them on day 2.
All right. And day 3, I got to watch it. Okay, so day 1, you're in the creek you loved. Day 2, was that the same spot or one of the other areas you had found?
I started in there day 2. I left there with 2 keepers, a 4.5 and a 2-pounder, and just was not seeing what I needed to see. So I got out of there about 9 or 9:30.
Okay. And ran to another area where you found a bunch of fish. And then did you catch all your fish in day 2 or the rest of your fish in day 2 on that one area?
Yeah, so after I went to Ricon day 1, went to another area that I really liked, same exact setup, grass in the middle of the creek. On the back, it had timber and just perfect spawning stuff. And I caught them out in front of that grass on day 2, had my limit really quick. I think I left there with 28.5 pounds. I left there at about noon, and from then on, I basically practiced the rest of the day on day 2.
Okay. And obviously you caught a couple more because you weighed about 30 pounds.
Yep, I caught one.
2 more big ones.
Yep, I caught one more 5-pounder. Found 2 more areas that I really liked. The one area was actually where I caught my 8-pounder to exclamation point on day 3. I found that area on day 2. And then I found one other area. I saw some great big ones, but the wind was crashing there on day 3, so I couldn't even fish it on day 3.
Okay. All right. And then day 3, where'd you go back to and how were the fish acting?
So where I caught that 5-pounder, there was actually like 10 fish in that tree, and they were all like 5-pounders.
wow.
So that's where I started on day 3, hoping that they were still there, which they weren't. I didn't even catch one in there. Did not see a single fish. So that was interesting to me. Got out of there really quick, like 8:30. Went to where I caught them on day 2. Through all the trees where I caught him on day 2, didn't see much. Went to the back of the creek near where Lee lives. He was fishing the grass in the back. And then I turned around and started coming back out, and the fish just showed up. Like, just, I went through there, nothing, turned around, came back, and they were everywhere. It was super cool. And
Really?
caught it
You think those
4.5.
fish were sitting on the bottom and you couldn't see them, or do you think they were literally coming in from further out?
I think it's a combination of both. I really do. I think it's a combination. Because
Okay.
it just got lively. There was saw some fish everywhere. But yeah, I caught a 4.5, and then I lost a 7, roughly 7,
Oh,
right at the boat.
yeah.
Obviously, that's a mental hurdle to get over. It took me a while to get over that. And yeah, but it was weird. They showed up for about a half hour, and they went away just as quick, just gone, completely
Oh,
gone.
wow.
And that was a tough decision to make. Can't remember what time it was, but it was a hard decision for me to make. Do I stay there and hunt these fish down because I know how big they are? Or do I pull a plug and start running other stuff? And ultimately pulled the plug, got out of there, had one fish, went to the creek that I really liked, that I caught him in on day 1, and it was flowing steady. I was seeing hardly any fish, but I was able to scrap up 3 more keepers, and all of a sudden I'm at another decision time. It's 1:30, got 4 fish. My 4 fish were like 14 pounds. Knew I definitely had the door open because I had a 10-pound lead. So Corey would have had to catch 24 pounds to beat me and everyone else more. So I knew definitely left the door open. Had to make sure I caught another one, hopefully a big one, to really give myself a good chance. But ultimately made the decision to get out of there and go. I had the decision to make to go where I caught him on day 2 or go to that new area where I caught the 5-pounder. That was the decision I had. And my gut just told me to go to that new area. Even though I didn't see a single fish there in the morning, something told me to go back there. And that's where I ultimately caught the 8-pounder at the last minute.
That's awesome.
I want to talk about that last fish for a second. Like, you're sitting there on day 3, you had the lead, you're sitting there with 4 fish. What's going through your head? Do you think that you just lost the Bassmaster Classic? How'd you keep your composure and ultimately end up catching that giant?
I had 4 fish for quite some time, and it was really hard to block out that 7-pounder that I lost, knowing that it was really hard to think or not think about that. When I'm struggling, when I feel like I'm missing the boat on something, it just drives me to work harder and keep trying different stuff just because I can't stand missing the boat on something. So my brain just starts flying at 100 miles an hour. Like, what am I missing? What do I try next? That sort of thing. I had just so much confidence in that Nico that I knew if I just ran enough water and put it in front of enough pieces of structure and enough fish that it would happen. But yeah, who knows what would have happened if I would have went where I caught them on day 2. Maybe they would have showed up. Maybe they were there again. Maybe I would have went there and caught one. But ultimately, I went to where Plus, it got really windy, and that other spot was actually pretty close to the ramp, so that was another decision that was in the back of my mind. I'd get more fishing time in that other area that I'd found on day 2. That was another reason why I went there, and yeah, I mean, went to the tree, I caught that 5-pounder on day 2. There was 2 great big ones in there. They both followed my bait down, nothing, fished them for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes maybe. I couldn't get them to go, so went further back into the creek and then found another tree that had that giant and had another giant. There's 2 great big ones on it, and took about 10 minutes. I got her, that 8-pounder, and then I basically had to go in. But the crazy thing with that 8-pounder was she was in the middle of the tree, and I flipped my jig at her a couple times, and she wouldn't not react to the jig. Didn't even, no acknowledgement whatsoever. And I was starting to second guess if it was even a bass, but I was like, a drum won't sit in that tree. It's not a gar. I can tell by looking at it, it's not a gar. And whatever reason, she swam out of the tree. Something made her swim out of the tree, and that's when I ultimately sniped her. And she came up to my worm and actually denied it and started swimming away. And normally when something like that happens, I'm already reeled in. I'm making another cast at her. I don't know what made me keep my bait in the water, but she got like 20 feet away from my bait, swimming away. And all of a sudden, she just glows. Basically everyone's viewed forward facing now. When they're swimming away and they glow, that just means like they're turning, like they glow super bright. And she did that, got 20 feet away, and she started turning, and she just ignited. Like, she went from negative, and all of a sudden, she just, I don't know what made her ignite on my, but it was the coolest thing. It was just one of those deals completely meant to be, but she just ignited on it and flew so fast and just hammered my bait. It was the coolest fish catch I've ever had, no doubt, and probably ever will have.
Was your bait on the bottom at that time, or are you like up over a limb dangling?
Look, she swam out of the tree, so this all happened in open water. Yeah, she swam out of my bait, or she swam up to my bait, swam away, just completely uninterested, and just something triggered her. I didn't do anything special on my bait, nothing. Like, she just ignited and came flying back and hammered it. And yeah, my
And
bait,
it was just sitting there dead still, or you were?
I was just shaking it in play right above the
Okay.
bottom. And yeah, I can't come up with a conclusion on what made her do that, but something did. Yeah, crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm a firm believer in what's meant to be will be, and the winners are predetermined before we get there. So I think you'd have caught a big one anywhere you went. Them last 2 places, just because I don't know. That's how I feel about tournaments. What's meant to be will be, and that's why she turned around and came back and bit your bait. And I don't know. Did you do the math? Would you have won without her?
Yeah, I would have won by 6 ounces without her.
Oh, wow. That's a little too close for comfort, but yeah, it was an awesome fish catch at the end of the day. Exclamation point on the Classic. Jacked up when I saw you caught that one. I think they were actually going off you, and then I was scrolling on Bass Track and I seen you caught an 8-pounder. I was freaking out. And then they went back to the coverage, but it's pretty awesome. And congratulations again. And yeah, proud of you, man.
Yeah, thank you.
Big win for Minnesota and all the boys up north.
If I can go back for 1 second, I think the coolest moment of the Classic, obviously, was when you put that 8-pounder in the live when you just sat there for a moment. I want to know what was going through your head. Was that the biggest relief, weight off your shoulders? Do you know you just absolutely sealed it right there?
I knew it was a really good shot. It would have taken the biggest bag of the tournament for Corey to beat me, which obviously is extremely possible, but that's really all you can ask for. He definitely earned it if he did beat me. That's what was going through my head. But there's that picture of me with my hands on my head on the live wall, and then I walked up on the front deck and just had my hands on my knees for a while. It was just so many memories flying through my head at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It was a really cool moment for sure. The last 2 years of my life just flying through my head and everything it took to get to the elites and the Classic. And yeah, it was a super cool moment, just how everything was flying through my head at 1,000,000 miles an hour. It was something I'll never forget.
I got to reiterate what Seth said. Congratulations, a huge accomplishment. Love to see it from a Minnesota boy, and we're happy you're on the team. Huge props to you there. One other thing I wanted to ask is the last 2-3 years of your life have been the craziest track records I've ever seen. Has this been the longest 2-3 years of your life, or has this gone by in the blink of an eye?
Oh, it's gone by so fast. So fast. And it's just, yeah, it's crazy how if I didn't win that college tournament, how different my life would be right now. Because I would have had to work a couple of years to get the funds to fish the Open.
Mhm.
So obviously I was going to do whatever it took to get there eventually, but how that just leapfrogged my career by, yeah, literally nothing from then on would have happened if it wasn't for that tournament. So it's just crazy how that one event completely changed the trajectory of my life.
Oh yeah.
Should we get into a couple questions? You
Yeah.
think?
Roll them
Okay.
out.
All right. Couple questions from some of our viewers. Some of them are going to be specific for Easton, specific for Seth. Some of them are for kind of both of you. Let's start with one for both of you guys. If we take forward-facing sonar out of the equation here, this is from Bass Gilly. What's your guys' favorite way to catch fish? Favorite technique?
For me, a frog and flipping. That's swim jigging, anything like that. Big flipping sticks, shallow, fishing around covers, probably. It's hard to beat a frog bite. A swim jig's right there, and I don't know. I like flipping. That's probably my favorite thing to do.
I've known you for a few years now, but a lot of guys think of you as smallmouth guy. But whenever I've talked to you,
not at all. I understand I've had some good success in smallmouth tournaments, but I grew up fishing lakes full of milfoil and pads and stuff like that, and boat docks, and I like just visually fishing with heavy duty stuff. More in Minnesota, they think there's smallmouths everywhere. Like growing up around the cities, it's different for Fothergill. He's got them more up in the smallmouth part of the country, but the majority of the stuff I was fishing growing up, pretty much all largemouth fishing. So a little different part of the state.
Yeah, for me,
Easton, for you,
always flipping a jig. He's one of my favorites. But yeah, like Seth was alluding to, my lakes were unique because on one day I could flip a jig for a day and catch 20 largemouth, and I can go fan cast a hair jig or a small swim bait and catch 20 smallmouth on the same lake in the same day. But that's probably my two favorite techniques: flipping a jig and fan casting for smallmouth, clear water. It's probably my two favorite things.
we're cool. All right, this one is just for Easton here. Someone was asking, now that you're $300,000 richer, have you had any time to make a significant purchase? If so, what did you purchase?
I'm saving up for my first house. It's gonna be where
There you go.
There you
it
go.
goes to.
Nice.
So yeah.
You didn't make a strip club run with the boys and
Oh, absolutely not. That's,
blow half of it?
no,
Okay.
I gotta get my stuff together before anything fun happens.
There you
I
go.
gotta buy a house.
Stay out of Vegas then.
Saving up for a house, are you going to be down there or you coming back up here?
Probably gonna buy something down here and do half and half like I'm doing. Might go. I don't know. Definitely want to be a little bit centrally located, but I got to figure out a way to spend summers in Minnesota. Can't miss out on that.
Yeah, they're tough to
Yeah,
beat.
no doubt. Where are you looking? Alabama or
Alabama, Tennessee.
where's your dream spot to live?
Alabama or Tennessee, somewhere around where I'm at right now, the Coosa River or the TV is where I'd like to set up.
Yeah, no doubt.
Cool. All right, this one's for both of you guys. Another really good question from a younger viewer of ours. What advice would you give the younger generation that wants to compete at the highest level and fish with you guys?
Fothergill might know better, but I didn't have this growing up, but like it's a totally different game now with the high school fishing and the college fishing. Like he got to, through college fishing, go fish a bunch down south and do stuff like that. So probably a better question for him. I was just a little team derby guy around the house, but there's a lot more stuff in place now than there was 20 years ago.
Sure.
Yeah, for me, you got to find just a high quality college team. You want a team that's got good funding and also a team with a bunch of kids that you can bounce ideas off, because doing that for 4 years, there's no telling how much I learned. My team, we had kids obviously from Alabama, a bunch of kids from Minnesota and every other corner of the country. And you can imagine all the late nights sitting around just bouncing ideas off each other for 4 years. How much you learn is unbelievable. So I guess my advice to any kid is just work your way up the ranks. Definitely don't skip on the whole college deal. Any kid who wants to learn more about it, I tell them all the time, you can reach out to me and I'm definitely willing to help you get in touch with any college team you want. I got contact to basically any coach you could ever want. So definitely reach out to me if you want tips on college fishing. But yeah, just work your way up the ranks and obviously work hard, and that's definitely possible.
And did you pick your college exclusively just on bass fishing? Was that like the only factor into where you went?
When I was coming up. It's different now. There's so many schools that have good funding, but it was one of the best funded programs when I was coming up. And then the location being right next to Lay Lake is one of the best playgrounds there is in the country. So those were the two determining factors, was the funding and the location of the school.
Okay.
All right. This is the last question I've got for you guys. We can talk a little more after this, but Shrimpston on Instagram. If the situation ever arose, Easton, would you smoke a dart with Seth Feider?
Sure. Why not?
Doesn't have to be a full one. It could be you could split
Take
it.
a puff. All right. I got plenty if you ever want to make that come true.
I'd do it. It'd be a good body moment for me and stuff.
Yeah. Classic champ pretty much has to.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can make it happen at Omnia HQ. That would be outside. All right. Any closing thoughts from you, Seth? I've got nothing else.
Oh, no, just another congratulations. Awesome performance. Glad to see it happen for you. Glad, proud of Minnesota kid and bringing it back home and representing the North very well. And, you know, just a
Absolutely.
stand-up guy. And this is not the last you're going to see a Easton Fothergill. He's getting this is just the beginning. I see a bunch of good stuff coming from this kid in the future and excited to watch it go down.
Absolutely. Well, Easton, again, huge thank you for taking some time out of your week to come chat with us. But reminder to you guys, 20% off Strike King and Seagar products. Use code Easton at checkout. Thank you for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time.
See you, boys.
Thank you.